Today we are here with my friend Janine. Janine is a big advocate for languages and has, vast experience as well in languages. So, Janine, welcome.
Thank you.
So let me start by asking you, how did you begin with languages? What started the passion that you have for languages? And what are the languages that you speak?
So I think my interest in languages began maybe in early secondary school. So I was a student at Bishop Anstey in Port of Spain, and we would have been exposed to what we had to do, Spanish and French. So I think from then my interest was piqued, and I also, while in school, became very interested in learning Portuguese. And at the time, actually, we had Portuguese courses, but I was underage because you have to be 18 to join. And so I begged my grandmother to get me a Portuguese book that I saw in RIK. And I started learning Portuguese on my own from then until I was able to join the class formally when I entered UE as an undergraduate student. So that's the third one I would have been exposed to. And then when I was in probably, I think it was second year in UE as an undergrad, I picked up Mandarin as just an extracurricular activity.
But it's not every day, of course, in this part of the world that we encounter people who, one, have an interest in Eastern languages and who have mastered Eastern languages. So why Chinese? Why Mandarin?
Why? Oh, it is actually it's an interesting story, I guess, depending on how you look at it. It was not my first choice. At the time, the Center for Language Learning had courses for undergraduate students at $50 for the semester. So I was trying to, every semester that I've been at that I was supposed to be at the university, I wanted to take advantage of that $50 fee. So we were initially going to study Italian, but the Italian class, I think it got canceled that year. I can't remember, but then I was going to enter the Japanese class. Japanese class was full. So she was like, you know what? Let's try Chinese. So I was like, okay. I never thought, I would end up in a Chinese class. So I said, well, okay, I'll give it a try. And then mid-semester, I realized, oh, this language is, something I've never been exposed to. It's something that was so unique at the time because I've only been exposed to the Romance languages. So I realized it was something very fascinating for me. It got me interested in a lot of aspects of their culture. And I think my teacher was very instrumental in helping with that. And from there, I just kind of let it flow. I continued with the Mandarin. At that time, we only had 3 years, 3 levels. So that would be 6 semesters of Mandarin, and the rest I had to kind of continue on my own to study.
It's good that you've mentioned the Romance languages. So we know for a fact that normally that is what people learn, right, in Trinidad, well, in this part of the world in general, because the structure is, of course, much more similar to English.
Yes.
Easier for us to learn. So being an educator, do you find that your students have a more difficult time learning Mandarin as compared to their colleagues who might be learning Spanish or French?
I think so. I think they do. I think they do. Because, the reality is, and I know I've had some discussions with some other persons who may disagree, who say that, it's not good to tell students that Mandarin is difficult. But the reality is, it does require a lot more effort compared to a language that doesn't have a script like Chinese does. Because when you have to, if you have to learn a word, like I told some students in class the other day, I was like, sometimes we can use our native tongue, English, to guess some words that we may encounter in French, to a certain extent in Spanish. But in Mandarin, if you don't know the word, it's unlikely that you can't produce something that may come close to the word. So it has a lot of, because of its differences from English, it does present a lot of challenges, but like any challenge, it can be, dealt with. Yeah, because when I was learning Mandarin, like I didn't have a lot of Mandarin speakers around me. I'm not from the Chinese community, so I didn't have that interaction with other native speakers. Most of the exposure I had to create myself. So I would have to surround myself with the media. So what worked for me is I like to read. So I read a lot of graded readers, which is scaled according to a learner's level in Chinese. So I read a lot. I listened to a lot of videos, just passive listening. And by the time I went to China, I was already at a good, comfortable level. So it was at that time in China, I would have really experienced a lot of growth and exposure to a lot of growth to my skills and exposure to other native speakers.
You made an important point. We are always learning. I could
Yes.
definitely relate to that in terms of, as you said, language changes. I think people don't necessarily understand that. Persons who are not interested in languages, that aspect of it, that it is always evolving. There's always new slang. There are always new fields that are opening up. AI, for instance, is a whole
Oh, yes. That
field
is
by
adding a
itself.
new dimension
Exactly,
to
yeah.
language learning. I think, but it presents something good because, when I started learning, like I told you, there was nobody in my immediate environment that spoke Mandarin. But you could talk to an AI and practice communication. I mean, you may not hear them speaking, but you can practice. For example, 你叫什么名字? What is your name? You can practice answering some of the like having a simple conversation using your conversation questions from class. That's something you can use the AI to practice with. We didn't have that back then. You kind of had to just practice with yourself. Even outside of China, being able to use Mandarin. So, for example, like I was in Cameroon last December and last month as well. So I came back last month. And I remember going to a restaurant, a Chinese restaurant, and I just told the lady, I said, "Hey, what? My French is not all that hot. Can we just have this conversation in Mandarin? Let me order my stuff." And yeah, we had a very long conversation. She was very surprised because I don't think she expected, somebody come in the office in her workplace, in her restaurant, to order something in Mandarin. And it made me feel good because she felt very comfortable. She could use her native tongue. She as well, who is French is probably her second or her third language, so she didn't have to use that to communicate. She was able to use her native tongue with me, and I think you get to there's something about using their language, like interacting with the natives. They feel very surprised. And I think they feel they are a little bit more open with you when you reach them at their language, because by you speaking their language, you show appreciation for them, for their culture, for their history.
Being so involved in languages, I'm sure you follow, the whole geopolitical global space. Given that China is now, being labeled as the upcoming world power, how do you see Mandarin Chinese, affecting, or how do you see it influencing our region in the future? How important do you think it will eventually be for us?
I think personally, I don't think it will overpower the importance of English in the region if we look at like Caribbean and Latin America, but I think it will be an important asset for maintaining and even strengthening relations with China. When you learn Mandarin, you not only just learn their language, you learn about the people who speak the language. And having that cultural appreciation, you will build stronger bonds with the host country, China. So I think it will grow in importance, and it's whether or not our government kind of reacts to that or puts things in place to facilitate it, the language being a gateway to improved relationships, an improved relationship with China.
For persons who might be interested in Mandarin, because you teach Mandarin at the University of the West Indies in St. Augustine, how could people get involved in Mandarin or in learning Mandarin?
They can come. We have classes from September to July. It runs according to the academic year. So the next offering we will have for beginner learners will be from May to the end of July. So 13 weeks of Mandarin instruction is online. So you can join from anywhere, the comfort of your home, your office. And we go through just the basics of Mandarin progressively until we have 3 levels. So it takes you up until about lower intermediate, around that level. Yeah, and we do have a lot of cultural activities, so you can have your own little environment where you can practice your Mandarin. So upcoming, we have an event on March 13th and 14th. So that will be at the Center for Language Learning from 9 to 3 p.m. So on that day, we will actually showcase all the languages that we teach. I want to highlight the Chinese booth because we are one of the stronger language presentations. We have had that reputation of being one of the stronger displays for the open house event over the years. So I would encourage you to come, experience Chinese culture, and I'll be there so you can ask any kind of information you may have, anything about Mandarin or some aspect of Chinese culture visiting China. I'll be there to address any questions you may have.